more of Ladies Can We Talk with Debbie Georgatos, right here on 660 AM The Answer.
Hello there. Welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, we have our guests on the line. I mentioned earlier tonight we have Tami Nantz of SmartGirlPolitics. Hey there, Tami.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so happy you're on. Well, we've been talking about gun violence and the Oregon shooting, and I do want to get into it. You just wrote a fabulous article. In fact, I told our listeners, I put it up on our Ladies Can We Talk Facebook page. It's called, Hey, Mr. President, Doesn't My Kid Deserve Protection Too? It's a great title. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, give you a chance, if you would, just to tell our listeners, I've actually touted Smart Girl Politics on this show before, and my mantra that all the energy in women and politics is on the conservative side. So would you tell our listeners about Smart Girl Politics?
I would agree wholeheartedly that the energy is on our side. Smart Girl Politics is an organization that was formed in 2008 by two stay-at-home moms who were extremely passionate about what was going on the political landscape at the time, and they created a site that is written by women for women. And we are mostly conservative women. Well, I would say we're all conservative women, but we don't limit ourselves to reaching only conservative women. The whole idea is to pull in, women of like mind from both sides of the aisle to educate them and engage and really just, get them involved in the political landscape. So many people on our side for so long have not been involved. Conservative women tend to be the quieter bunch, have been in the past at least, but I think in the last 7 or 8 years, we've seen a shift in that take place, and it's been encouraging.
It is encouraging. It's downright exciting. My mantra for this show is all issues are women's issues, and I try to make the point that the left just seems to pigeonhole women into thinking that all they care about are the 2 or 3 of the kind of social issues. And I have exactly the same motive as you're talking about with Smart Girl Politics. With my Ladies Can We Talk? I want us to talk about politics, to think, to understand what's happening to our country, to form ideas based on knowledge. But I want to jump to your article. So we could go on other things too, I'm sure. But, right after this horrific shooting in Oregon at the community college in Roseburg, President Obama and other liberals right away came out with the idea that the answer to this problem is to advocate for more gun control. I thought you wrote a great piece giving a counter view of that. So just you tell our listeners what's wrong with Obama's view.
Well, I was offended that day when he went to the podium. I don't often tune in to listen to the entirety of his speeches because, frankly, they bore me. But that day, I was real upset about what had happened, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. And so I tuned in, and he stood there and lectured me while he was surrounded with armed guards, and should be, about how I don't deserve to protect my child, or that our children don't have the right to be essentially to be protected in schools. He immediately, right out of the gate, literally before parents at that school even knew who, if their children were the ones that were shot. Literally, the bodies had not all been taken out of the building yet, according to some of the reporters on the scene. And he was already at the podium telling us how we need stricter gun control. And the fact of the matter is only about 6 to 8% of legal guns are used, legally purchased guns are used in any kind of murders in this country that are of all kinds of murders, not just, and most of those are domestic violence. They are not usually the guns that are used in these kind of events are illegally purchased. But regardless of that fact, we could go on and on about all those statistics. But the point of it is, gun-free zones our kids are being targeted. Essentially, a target is being put on their backs because these criminals know they're going to be able to go on to these universities and grade school campuses and they're not going to be met with by anybody who has a firearm unless a parent in a state where, concealed carry is allowed on the premises but not in the school, unless you have a parent that might by some chance be on the school school grounds that day, or, if the school resource officer is at that school at that particular time. Most of the time we don't have anybody there who's armed. And so they know that. They go in. These people are cowards. Most of them are not of sound mind, and they go in and go out in a blaze of glory before they kill themselves or, die by police shooting. And so that's not the answer. The answer, well, we could go on all day about what the answers are, but gun-free zones are not the answer.
Yeah,
and I was very offended by that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I was saying before the last break how gun-free zone is an invitation to a criminal because what could possibly go wrong with their plan? There's no one to stop them. It's kind of like saying, a police-free bank. We have no security guards, no police come here. It's like, come on in and rob us. It's kind of saying so.
Well, it's an invitation.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I thought another great point you made, because it is always the American left that comes up with, the answer to any crime or any horrible tragedy like this is to advocate further gun control. But you made a great point in your article, too, about how gun control advocacy is kind of a form of a war on women. It's telling women, don't arm yourselves, don't be able to protect yourselves.
It is, and I believe it's also a war on children. Women, I think, are probably the ones that potentially can benefit the most from owning guns, because we are typically smaller, not quite generally as capable of defending ourselves, although that's not always the case, but I would say as a general rule it's true. And so we're the ones that, having a firearm, if that is a choice that we have made, can mean the difference between living and dying. I've never felt more empowered than when I'm at the range shooting. Or when I go out into public, and my husband's in law enforcement, and so many, many years ago, I got my concealed carry. Well, I only recently got my concealed carry permit. I started learning to shoot many, many years ago, and it was because, we constantly would run into people on the street that maybe he had arrested or whatever, and it became a concern. And so I began to learn how to use a firearm. I'd shot a little bit as a child, but, had not had any interest in it until, it became a thing, a matter of protecting myself and my family. And so I learned how to shoot, and the difference between how I felt before that, which was helpless, and after that, when I had a tool that I could use to defend myself if it became necessary, was enormous. And so, women can feel empowered. And so I do believe it's a war on women. I believe they are taking away my right to protect myself. And, if a person chooses not to go and purchase a firearm, I respect that. I realize that people who have not grown up in a culture where firearms were just kind of the norm. I grew up in a rural community, and so hunting and my dad was a Marine, and so, this was just the norm for us. I realize not everybody grows up that way, and so I understand that there is a fear of firearms, but it's a tool just like anything else, and you learn how to use that tool properly and effectively and safely, and it can save your life and be a huge empowerment for a woman.
I just could not agree more. That was one of the points I was going to bring up, and I'm so glad you did. Just that there's a notion that in America, essentially, that the Second Amendment exists, but there's a notion, too, about just freedom and individual choice. And I hear women say, well, I'd never want to own a gun. I think that's fine. It's just no one's saying you have to, but why are you telling other people they have to, and they have to have that same fear of guns that you do? I think there's a real need to say, fine for those. If you don't want to have one, don't, but don't take away my right to defend myself. Okay, one last thing, because we're up against our break time, trying to comply with these little break times here. Well, every segment I have goes long because everybody's fun to talk to. But you mentioned your article about how the lawmakers, especially those on the left, tend to just say, well, the answer is gun control and take away people's guns. So if that's not what American people want, I mean, I always urge people, you have to let your views be known. Tell your friends, tell your elected officials. And I think that's part of Smart Girl Politics is about, too, is just tell your elected officials how you feel about these issues. Is that right?
Absolutely. That I would say would be the primary thing. Let them know how you feel and educate your friends and family. My other point would be, if you are in favor of this, go buy a gun and learn how to use it safely, and then educate others. Feel empowered, and then go and teach others how to feel the same way. But yes, absolutely, letting your officials know how you feel and educating others are the primary things.
Absolutely. We are speaking with Tami Nantz, who is the editor-in-chief for Smart Girl Politics. I urge you, and if you can just say quickly, the website for Smart Girl Politics is?
SmartGirlPolitics.com.
Okay. It's a great website. It's a great organization. Tami, thank you for calling in tonight.
Thank you so much.